All right, hello everybody. I'm George Williams. I'm from the Northeast Kansas Library System in Lawrence, Kansas.
I'm Christopher Brannon with the Coeur d'Alene Public Library and the Cooperative Information Network in Washington, Idaho.
And today, this is another thrilling episode of every other Thursday Koha videos. And we're going to be talking about some more SQL stuff. And right now I'm at the koha-US site, which is at koha-us.org. And you can find what we've done already if you go to the link that says Learn from koha-US. And then there's the link here that says koha-US videos. There's a whole list of these videos here. The last few weeks we've been doing a lot of SQL. You can also find us on YouTube. And if you click on playlists, there's the terrific Every Other Thursday training videos. There's the whole list right there. And today we're going to be talking about some more SQL, and this shouldn't be a terribly long video, but I thought we would talk about what's that?
Famous last words.
I think we can keep this under 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
When you have to be on the desk in like about 25 minutes, we can be done in 25 minutes.
Okay.
So we've talked about a lot of things so far, tricks to do in MySQL, and one of the things that is in a bigger report that a lot of these things are leading up to is a union query. And so that's what I'm going to talk about today, is how to do a union query. And this is a way of essentially having two queries and running them together as one query. So I'm actually going to run this query and this query first. I'm going to run those in a new window. And this is just a query that's doing pretty much just one thing. I'm getting all of the data out of the reserves table.
Okay.
And I do have one weird little thing here. I've got an if-then statement. If reserves ID is not null, then I'm going to call this active. And if reserves ID is null, I'm going to put a dash there. This is just building up to another query. But what I've got here essentially is every piece of the reserves table. And in the second one that I've run, I've got the exact same thing going on, but instead of the reserves table, I'm getting all of the data from old reserves. So in Koha, when you place a request, all the information about that request goes into the reserves table. And then when that request is canceled or filled, or if it expires, then all of the data in the reserves table over here gets moved into this table called old reserves. So there are some times when something you're looking for might be, you might want to be searching for it in reserves, or you might want to be searching for it in old reserves.
Yeah.
And so what we can do, instead of having to run a query to search old reserves and then running a separate query to search reserves, we can combine them. And that's what this third query does, is we can combine all of this stuff from reserves and all of this stuff from old reserves into one table, into one set of results. So in this first one, we've got 14,330 results. And in the second one, we've got 222,065 results. And in this one, we've got all of those results together in one in one place. Now, in and of itself, let me show you how we do this. In and of itself, that's not helpful. But if we were doing like a subquery, if we could use this data as a subquery in another query to get things out of this table, out of this big new massive table that we've created. And so this first report that I ran, it's select, and it's all the data from reserves. And the second one, it's select, and then all the data from old reserves. And in this one, I've got a select that does all the data from reserves. And then I've got a second select that does all the data from old reserves. And in between the two, I've got this union.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things you have to do with union is that you have to make sure that the number of columns you're creating in the first select query matches the number of columns that you've got in the second one.
Yeah.
So if you're
the thing that I ran into before, my an incorrect understanding or belief was that you had to have the same types of columns, but no, it's just the number is the key.
yeah, you can, we could do all these backwards. It would make it completely useless. It would ruin the function.
It's,
But so long as the number of columns is the same, because SQL isn't going to want to put out a result that has half of the columns are 8, half of the results have 8 columns and half of the results have 7. SQL doesn't know how to output that kind of data. But so now I've got a report that essentially what I've got is a gigantic list of every reserve, every request that is in the system, whether it's just been placed or whether it's already been filled or it's been canceled or it's expired, any situation where that request is still in the database, it's here. This union query is getting it. So like I said, in and of itself, would I want to download this and use it for something? I can't think of a good thing I could do with that on its own. But what I can do, let's see, that one was number 3, so the next one would be number 4. What I can do that makes it useful, though, is I can get some more data. I can link this to other tables. So here's the union query that I created in those first 2 steps. Here.
you've turned it into a subquery.
And I've turned it into a subquery in this other query. And so the results I get, not only do they have the data that I want from the old reserves and old reserves, but I've also got, you know, the card number of the patron that placed it, because I've linked the borrower number in reserves and old reserves out to the patron data so that I can get the card number. I've got the item barcode and the item information that I want. So this is kind of how I build these reports when I'm working on them. Is first I say, okay, I want this data. So I write a report that shows me how to get that. And it's like, okay, then the next. So I knew when I was working on this originally, when I created it, I knew I was going to need data from reserves. So first I wrote the query to get the reserves data. And then I thought about it and I said, I'm also going to want the data from old reserves. So then I wrote the query to get old reserves and I linked them together. And then I thought of the other things that I would need. And then I added some refinements. That was number 4. So this would be number 5. Once I knew that I had all the things I wanted, then I added a drop down so I could say, show me just the things for this specific pickup library. And then I created a drop down for, do I want all the requests or just the ones that have been filled? And then I could even enter a specific barcode number for an item, which I'm not going to do here. So this way I can get a list. And I've had this, the reason I have this is because I have this question come up from libraries is, you know, this patron wants to know, you know, I want to know about this request that a patron placed. What's the information about it? So this way I can use this report to say, you know, the request was placed on this date, it expired on this date. There's a timestamp for when the last time it was modified, and here's all the item information. This is actually modified from what I actually have in our system. This is just a sample report, but the actual report on our system tells you who the patron is too, so that you can go directly to that patron's account. The parameters that I added in here are, where, actually, if I go to edit, we can see the drop downs. I've got one of the parameters is, choose the branch code, and it's looking at the request branch code. So it's showing the items that were scheduled that were requested to be picked up at a specific place. And then I actually created an authorized value table called hold ACT, so that I could get that active, canceled, in progress, all of those different things in that drop down.
Right.
But that's one of the ways you can use a union query. I've got another example here that I won't walk through the steps of how I created it, but let me just run this one. This one is called top 200 circs in the previous year. And so let's just pick a branch that's going to have a decent amount of circulation. And let's just do books, Leavenworth books, nonfiction. And so this report, that's what it was generated for, is, what are the things in the previous calendar year that had what's the high circulation in those categories. And let me show you the code for this. So the union that's in here is the same thing. I needed to get data from issues and from old issues.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got issues and old issues are joined here. And that creates essentially a big list of all the issues, all the checkouts. And then the rest of this data connects to those.
Right. I find those unions are great between the issues and the reserves, but also with borrowers. I mean, you might want information that happens that happened in a specific time period, but some of those borrowers or items or issues or reserves, some of those may have resolved and moved to another table, and that's where it's like you're getting incomplete information if you're not using union to combine those tables to get a complete picture.
Yeah, when I had the reason that I created this specific, top 200 circs in the last year report is there is one, it seems like there's a high circ report built into Koha. But one of my predecessors at this job had created a report that was looking at top circs, but it was only looking at old issues. Mm-hmm. So if something was checked out right now, you wouldn't get any data from that. Right. And I have another version of this report that lets you look at a date range. So what were the top circs between date A and date B? This one I just created as a way of looking at the top 200 circs in the last year. But that was a shortcoming in the report that existed when I got to this job, is that it was only looking at old issues, but by adding this union here, then things that are still checked out are counted as those top circs.
Nice.
So that's how to do a union. And I don't think I may have put top 200 circs into the jQuery library and the Koha wiki. I don't think I put the other one in. I know I didn't put the other one in here because it refers to authorized values that don't exist unless you create them. So.
Mm-hmm. You mind if I expand on unions just a little bit?
No, go ahead. Do you want me to?
Yeah, let me go ahead and share.
Yeah, let me stop and I'll let you share.
Yeah. And I was showing you this earlier. Let me get this on here. So I've been playing with a union as well. Do you see my koha?
Yes.
Okay. So I've been playing with a union.
Actually, now I see Aperture Laboratories.
Oh, okay. Let me put it back over here.
There you go.
Okay. Interesting. Okay. It's actually sharing the screen, not the window. Okay. So I've been playing with this report recently, and this is using a union, but in a little bit different way. And this may be a report that I can share on more down the road, but this particular one combines several results that I had in individual reports earlier, and so I'm making use of cases, and I'm making uses of koha-US, which you educated me in on the last video. So really making use of that. But one of the things that you can do with union is, as long as you have the same amount of columns, you can put information into a report that has nothing to do with the previous information. So you can have results of two different reports in the same report. They have nothing to do with each other. They're not referencing the same information, but as long as you have the same amount of columns, you can still produce that information. So what I've done here is I have another report down lower that is totally unrelated to the information up above. But the headings up above don't match what I'm reporting down here below. So I've added a union that is just a select that adds some lines to show this is something different. And then I've added another select that is just some static information. These are my
like
new
a
headers.
subheader. Yeah.
Yeah, my new headers here. So now if I run this report, let me go ahead and run it. I'll just run it for this last month that I did here. It'll take a minute because it is pulling a lot of information, but the nice thing is it saves me so much time having to run a report, enter all the information, run a report, enter all the information. I can just do it once, which is really nice, and it'll feed back all of this information that I need. I'm not going to necessarily put everything into one report because I don't want to drag the system down, but this will give me a good chunk of it. And so the top half of this report is giving me back results based on library collection and the type of information that it's getting. This is from, I believe, can't remember if this is from the stats or from or another table. But anyways, it's pulling this information and parsing it out into categories that I've chosen. But then here are my dashes down below.
The separator.
We're breaking off into something else, and here's my mocked headers, and then completely different information. How many checkouts were done by Coeur d'Alene staff, and I'm going to add self checks and things like that. So this is a good representation of how you can use union in other ways other than combining like tables.
Right. So. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want you to do something. I definitely want you to explain this report in the future.
I look forward to it. And I really appreciated the information that you shared on koha-US. Man, that was an eye-opener for me because I had never, I'd come across koha-US once or twice, but I had never thought of it and used it in the way that you presented. And it was like, it really opened up possibilities for my report writing. I feel like I do a pretty decent job with reports, but this gave me more ammo that really made a huge difference.
Cool. So. Happy to help. Didn't even know I was doing it.
If you helped anybody, you at least help the person that you're working with here. So
awesome. There's so much stuff, especially early on, that I learned from you. So it's nice to, 10 years later to hear you saying, hey, I learned something from you too.
Well, I appreciate that.
All right.
So what do we have that we're going to, I know that you've been working towards this big global vision of your dashboard thing. What's next on the agenda?
The next thing, and I think it'll be the last thing that goes into that people ought to know before they do that, before I show off that report, is how to query the data directly from the mark, mark extraction. So that actually is pretty simple. That's something I learned from you. Well, I don't know if I learned it from you. I knew that it was out there, but you were the first person that I saw examples of how to use it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Way back in 2012 when we first started.
Back before they changed everything with mark in the records.
Yes, back when the mark data was in biblio items instead of in biblio metadata.
Yeah.
So the data is still there. It's just in a different table than it was 10 years ago. But you wanted to, you had issues with the report for the holds queue not showing the 245B or the 245P,
the subtitles,
yeah. And so this is where I learned how to do that. I had seen on the Koha SQL reports library how to do that, but you actually had a working example that I could plug into my system and then completely change. Nice.
Well, I love it. I love it when I can contribute and help those that help me. And I know that we've collaborated many times on reports. You've done a tremendous amount of work that I've built off of, and I'm glad to see that some of my work is coming back to you. So,
okay.
Awesome. All right. Well, until next time. Thank you very much.
We'll see y'all later.